Dia Yves agus tá fáilteóid go léir go dtí an imeacht seo. Good evening, and you're all very welcome to this event brought to you by Meath County Council Library Service. This event forms part of the Ireland Reads campaign, which is running throughout the month of February. The whole idea behind this campaign is to get people back into the habit of reading. The Ireland Reads website, irelandreads.ie, has lots of information on that, including information on a pledge, where on Thursday, the 25th of February, which is Ireland Reads Day, we're asking everybody in the country to drop whatever you're doing for a few moments and to pick up a book, a newspaper, a magazine, or your tablet if you've downloaded one of our BorrowBox ebooks, and to read. You can pledge for how long you want to do that for, whether it's a couple of minutes or an hour or more. So that's irelands.ie website. Okay, this event is recorded, so if you don't get a chance to see it, or you know somebody who didn't get a chance to join in with us, it will be available, and we will advertise that on our library website and on our social media, Twitter and Facebook accounts. Okay. So this evening's event, I'm delighted to introduce our two panelists. We have Manchán Magan. Good evening, Manchán, who is an author and journalist joining us this evening. And he is an interview with our County Librarian for Meath Library Services, Ciaran Mangan. So you're both very welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And to everyone out there, I hope you enjoyed the event. And without further ado, I'd like to hand over to our interviewer for this evening, our County Librarian, Ciaran Mangan. Okay, Ciarán.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Eve. Fáilte a chur Manchán, gur míle magat agus má bhuíochas a gháil leis os ghlacha leis an cura a bheith láthair an ucht. Tá ana agin go léir Manchán mar scríbhneoir, mar iriseoir, mar creaaltóir agus fearr bhfuil chun den hirbhí. An céad rud a chaimime rá le Manchán ná cógardgus. Tá 700 leabhar díobh agus an seachtain atá thart. 700 books sold in the last week, agus tá an tairg talca. So we've had the first day of spring, and Manchán is still in the bestsellers list, so I'm sure he is, and his publisher is delighted. So Manchán, caithfidh go tú anmh ródúil as an éacht seo.
Inte go táim, like ní chreatin riamh go naidreach le leabhar atá faoi tangan na Gaeilge, gan naidreach leis néachar, you know, agus fiú nuair a scríbme an leabhar, cha me sé bliana a scríb, agus ceap me, you know, nuair a bhí me tachtar deireadh sé bliana, hiag me tá fiúnta sé ag an leabhar seo. This book has some merit, I was thinking, at the end of my 6 years, but like níl on kind of on pobl ann gombeach sim I was convinced that there wasn't that big community there who would be interested in a book about Irish. Ach an rud nar hiag me na rudaí a tharla an bhliain seo, an galar COVID agus an dearcha atá ag oscailt ag trí agus in an daoine go bhfuil mí de casa ag deireadh hir hawl a rais ar an Aireacht agus ar chultúr. I just could never have guessed that we were, as a nation, going to start reconnecting with who we were, with who we are, and who we can be once again. So it was a great time.
Manchán gur magat agus caimime go fuair mise an leabhar mar brontanas leid 3 ceithre uair, agus thug mé mar brontanas 3 ceithre uair. Ní na cópan le céin inis, ach leabhar álainn atá ann, caimime sin rá seo leabhar fíor álainn, tá an dearg go hálainn, an pápéir, fiúán an cló, an clúdach, agus tá an price go maith freisin níl te rud éir, agus fós má haon daoine go fuair siad slagmarga. Ó thaobh an cló de bhí me tógtha leis an slí a bhí an cló beagání ní smó ná mar aimíonn siad a gná, agus bhí cuid rudaí agus bálam ceiste cuirt bhfuil seo céimhéad buint a bhí agatsa leis an deara agus na cinenne maidir leis an clúdach agus le héad. Was how much of an influence you had or an input you had to the design and the final production qualities of the book?
So ní raibh buint dá laide gom leis, ná ní raibh fiú buinte gom le tidal an leabhar. So an rud go dtigam se, you know, tá drámaí scríte gomsa agus séhar alíon agus mar sin de, agus go minic ceapan an taliantóir gur big nó kit of William Tolis. Ach an read Neil and Marga Rolas Sagrina. So like I've written plays and I've done artworks, and often the artist thinks they're the best person to put their to know how to package their stuff. But we're not in the market of selling. We're in the market of creating. Like another Gael books, you know, tied fear dira rud their leg. Gael books have sort of mastered one thing, the Irish bestseller. Tiggin siad kata o noch fechene. Ni yelin siad na lawer go London no America no and Ijella. They don't sell their books anywhere else except in Ireland. Agus tiggin siad and Marga so. So vi couple tedel agum. Agus kinta da me tedel dan scup agum trid hin do. If I had an amazing title, I would have fought for it, but I didn't. And Hánig siad there until 32 words for field. Agus ní lisagum ceam brí atá leis. Is it a political thing, this 32 words? Or because I think I have about 33 or 34 words for field. I could have had 50 words for field, you know, from all of them, from whatever. But yeah, they chose the title. Agus an son Hurder and Lauer Gadi Aliantor, Steve Dugan, Nachrave and Ahanagum Air, Agus just Rinishe like Sard Ebre, Higshe Nauer, Higshe on Jara Gemecher, Agus and Kurimach Vecher, Agus toch an Prievrod Genen Gil. The main thing Gil thought, despite taking a book from me about the Irish language, which, you know, both me and them would have realized there's not going to be a huge demand for this. It would be a trickle thing. Dier Gerniag Beige Merdina Kindfree, Agus Trace Bliana Gemajor Mecha Milan or Vila Dilta. So I just thought it'd be a trickling thing, you know, 1,000 or 2,000 would be sold after the end of a year. But they decided, no, Kurmish include the crew. Let's put it out as a hard copy, a hard book, a hardback book for the Christmas. So vi untiv Idaho Salawer. They had this confidence in the book, not that it would sell huge amounts. They published 5,000 copies and they thought that would do them until Christmas or for the whole year. Agus, you know, trí no cera law vi an lawer sin imaha. Agus ni raibh sé fiú leite géine, so ni ag raibh sé gama, ach just tá an dúl in líne fui láhar san Irish. This rud úntach jarafache, kinte dumsa, ach doin geléir, big ruddy ag tarlú a machansa atá díre Irish na tíre, chultúr na tíre, as gahaide tangan na tíre seo. Tá ma súl emnos, gurb seo tús rud nua.
Gurmagat. Agus ó héh an Jara a ríist tá má Camden Maculaki on Shohan Philip, Tom French, August Tom Pinchagoni Gra, a handsome volume, Shin on Froze of when it used to also. So the Ain Lower, Huggins Jackson Lerlan, touch Pilner, August on Rod Harleen Lumps Wall and Tokuma Lower, Nwallo and Lerlan, a resuct, August Kaneem Lower, August on Focal of Winning Issues of us, barely no saver. Akini Doling will focal outcome as Gaeilge son sin agus tusa an den a hogan focal the rini so tum go cash the court focal a hort dum. So if you could give me a word for savor, that I savor this book.
I love the concept because it is that thing. The reason sometimes we're attracted to a book is we think good Dugashe Severus egg and doing Galinishe Falus egg and unning. Often the reason we're attracted to a book is we think it'll enrich us some way. It'll fill a barn, a gap inside of us. And like that whole concept of savor, you know, when you think of savor and Fuclas Berla, it's maphore. It's a metaphor. It's a food-based thing to savor food. So in one way you can't savor a book but you do. It's a physical thing. I want that book. It's this tangible thing. So Tom's just mean a fuckle of on like Tnuhan, you know, the yearning, the kind of unexplained yearning for something. By the Tnuhan. No, either on you know, on Mohushin, I don't know, Gamwinitu, salt, Gamwinitu, spree, Gamwinitu, soup is problem on Tafukel even a Gurkurina. They have a great word in West Kerry to really enjoy, to really savor something, to taste it is soup of wintas. And I don't know, is it the same word as soup aunlan, to drink soup? It probably isn't. It's just another version of spree or salt or splocha, or yeah, just to savor something, spree of wintas rud. So it's not exactly answering your question, but I think Tnuhan would be the best one, that yearning or desire.
Louis to on Fern on Shinna Gill, August Keiko Wahav Itan or have on Oberja to Kestcom or have Vitula Brandon books, Kekwata V Town, Oxen Shin Virt, astru or dastru to gaji gil keko jacker min sin an údar nor a kaite dul upper le dini defriochta nor tal says nask agat lesson on kid then a difficulty is to switch from one publisher to another.
Yeah. So how to co-dasser douche kun na lawer screeg met rivisha a lua. The ganani vin en taggart thus na lawer. So as you say, I did have like a decade ago, over a decade ago, I had a career as a writer. Screeg met 3 lawer tashtal, harter bader, gavilis a shay, gavilis a hocht, gavilis a de bader. So I wrote these 3 travel books, whatever, a decade ago. Agus screeg me lawer gwelga coma, agus manaida, ni luam na le lawer gwelga riav im of Dear Vahashnesh, Bioga Churum, the Kutina. I never mentioned my Irish language books that I've written in my little biogs that I send to people. Ach fi lawer avon orskel dar banam being raw, nira sharoa hadecher, ach dolce kushgeme. And so I had 1 novel and I did 2 travel books Oskrelga. Babaji agus Chinaji, I'd glare Erin shelf shin la steer them. Babaji agus Chinaji, that was one about my time in India. And the other one was Manachana Shachran o Vlakli Africa or Kenya is Shan Lariaram, a travel book about my time in Africa. So Screegman Lower Shin and Lower Gwelga, Nuravima Unog, Nuravima Dirach Taka Rashon, Trust Moor Shot Echtoch Shah Yanme Gadi on Afric in Nadiag Nocha. So I wrote this book about the Irish language version of my Africa travel book just after I'd come back. I was maybe 23 and 24, or 24. So the book is very true and very raw. I was in Sunscreen my lag and Bear the Shin in Yig Shin. Later I wrote an English version, and it was it was a little bit more polished. It's still pretty raw, to be fair, but I was so lucky. Glach Steve McDonough, Glach Agarhor Brandon Press Lum Tishka Stolin Garev Clark Telefishigum TG Carrigs Capsha Garev Gmerachaneg Dina Urum. So I'm so lucky. The great director, the great owner of Brandon Books, Steve McDonough, took me under his wing because I had a television program or 2. And the books, I mean, I'm still really proud of those books. They didn't sell all that well. But Ardera scream me 3 hour tashtal do fwin Ind, fwi America Has, August fwi on Afric. And the library still have those books. And then I wrote a novel for him. So the 3 books about the truck fever, about my time in Africa, Angels and Rabies about my time in South America, and Moncon's Travels about my time in India. And then Steve asked me to write a novel, and I did in maybe the year 2011 it came out. And it came out, and a month later, the publisher, the owner of Brandon, Steve, had a massive brain hemorrhage. And maybe that was only 2 weeks or a week after my book came out. And it was just work pressure. It was my book and all the other things he was doing. A publisher's life is very hard. So that book, nothing ever happened. Nothing came to that book, and poor Brandon had to be closed down and wiped and wound up. So I then I bought all the extra copies of the books. I think I have about still around my polytunnel. There are 300 copies of Oddballs, the last novel, which is keeping the slugs out of the polytunnel. So Maradurtu, Viderlishin Colocht and Shin Hog O'Brien books Cridus na Tiddle a V ag Brandon. Ach, ní ra bheith an fáilte háir gomsa le Demian an us. So nar a hánig an leabhar seo agus tréis séimhlí an a chiapas tá fiúntas aide sa leabhar seo. After 6 years, I thought this book has merit agus churme amach sa phobile. So I have an agent, tá unadíúntach go Marian Gunn O'Connor agus scapsí i measc na fáilte háir, my agent scattered among the publishers, and luckily Gail came back and believed in it strongly. And all of the others rejected it. But Gail had a vision.
Agus sin an sé truck fever bhí McSweenware hog me truck fever she's on shelf swalla agus bhí McBrandware agus tá clúdach fós uair truck fever tar a décan an geal faoi agus stolium mar dúirt tá sé an shelfs na Leirland agus she came na leabhar a fannig an shelf nach an sort leabhar meocht daoine go rá tá sin níl daoine á léamh chuir she's an store. So it has survived on library shelves and is being borrowed. Dúirtú á técan le déanaine go raibh tuirse cuirt a bheith taistil agus de bar sin dearc bhí McSweenware an raibh tuirse cuirt a bheith scríomh faoi an taistil an scríbhnóireacht an raibh an tuirse ag buint leis an scríbhnóireacht nó ar bé díreach an taistil.
Is stoilm no ní raibh tir seanam bheith scríb faoi an taistil. Is stocha an rud gur higas tréis beidir an rud a has to gom sa gcóí déanamh ná leabhar a scríb faoi na háitina go raibh gur cha mé lán am agus mar dúirt mé chuma blian san Ind, blian Americas, blian san Afric. An áit eile cha mé lán ama ná sa tín. Cha mé tína chuir a bhí sa tín is sa bhliain 2000 na 2000 sa héan bhí sra telefísio dhéanamh gom de telefísne de TNG or TG Gar dar tidal Manachán sanin, no Manachán sa tín is stocha. Agus le me gaché an leabhar ag an nám fiú sa rééis sin sa bhliain 2000 bhí sé so dhéanta gaché an leabhar os béle faoi an tína léh. Ní hé go raibh an leabhar scríte faoi agus for bhórdacha, but Bausgerucht hef oin no hef avian. So at the time, in 2000, I read every major book that had been written about China because there weren't that many, and so many of them were propaganda, either pro or anti-China. Agus daulame an Shinish agus gachrod, agus has to go lawer a scríb bunher an taidish in Gaeilge ach near Iriglum. Ach dera higme go raibh rud éigean riachtanach, go raibh taréis an tishkin to bhí feite gumsa chultúirí an dawan. Go raibh sé riachtanach ag an am seo go ducin na bhaile, go ducin na rais gehéir agus go úsáidin an léirgas sin, an tishkin sin can fechant me here féin. Like I felt that there was this urgency now, having been in those other countries and seeing the world from different perspectives, seeing this Weltan Schauung and sort of on ill Reierkach shot and Dowan do, that I wanted to look at Ireland through that prism, through that frame. So Kinte be an tastal ceannas na nithe an showed the hevre in the hail. Travel has been just such a precious jewel for me. Ach harla harod douche in Ravile agus Nadiag. The Irichin Baymer Kursi Umhela. There was such focus on environmental issues in 2019. Gur higme Neil share the Hart Gumsa mar Irishor, mar Screenor, a ve egg tahant ardina agus a vala dina con tashel gartinella. After the ecological knowledge and consciousness came along in 2019, I realized it wasn't my duty anymore to be, it wasn't right to be encouraging people to travel. So higme ni higamid irichin elementi agus gneha dar tier huchish, dar tanga huchish, dar shanairucht agus an rudga has to gum sadiru na a shin a hort keen. The thing I wanted with a passion to bring forward was this understanding of our landscape, of our language, of our heritage.
Agus treis an séblin an sin the hubtu an lewer sin struck gil agus an lewer céine a hánig amach a skill agus a imigus struck do low scríbhíní.
Wow, tá ceisna úntacha chuir go cinnte bhí an so mar a dúirt mé bhí sé bliana caite gom scríb an leabhar. Agus bhí sé go hanis formhór na hama, bhí mé ag athrá na rudí chéanna faoi an Gaeilge gnar an gachéan eile, agus na rudí chéanna faoi our culture agus our star. So, you know, most of that 6 years, this book was not a special book. I had all of these pages of insight, but it was saying the same things that we all say about the language. Agus dera, hat me chivi ag Cuba, hartar havli an hen. Agus screenam, vis a si laba, dear law in your Gaeilge, na noti galer farm, a denivir of Kahame crut a chur on scale shot, Kahame crut. So I was in Cuba, whatever, about 2 years ago, sitting on a bed with all the notes around me thinking, I cannot go on with this. It's been 4 or 5 years I've been trying to write this book. Where is the through line? How can I skaga? How can I sieve it all to get conmenach an laur, conmenach na kesh oil, to get the very essence of the story and to have a very simple through line that looks almost child's play, that looks childish, with these very tiny short chapters. I wanted nur a screen in an hour, vi gache an lanach just beidir mile quickhead focal, gache an capital. So I wanted every chapter to be maximum like 5 pages, or 3 pages sometimes. In the end, they use very big text, so maybe there's 7 pages. But I wanted them as 4-page chapters because Tommy Gaeilge cotar shach na leihem to show. You know, ni vi an aum agwin, mar a dortu, bi an dúl agwin Lev. As you said, we all have this yearning to read, but we don't have the time to do it. So dumsa few of oin, Cianto, tá má labba le stírdam agus tá na leabhar sin me shelf an sun. Tá goléir tá sin iad goléir. Be cheartm sa a bheith id léh gach aníthe. I should be reading those books there at my bedside every evening. Ach, just tit them a colour. I fall asleep. So I shall riachnach gemeg na cabadal gar. Agus is rud tragodach sin nach will an feinan an ardig dina con cabadal moorde fada agus lauer moorde grihe levehille. Ach, leve real leve fearna shini yernan an nelina the William Coney.
Agus do lewer an lewer a levegum har nolog hiig me an piece of vi agat matter leis na focal a vi kailte agus an piece gal lumsa na rugogs toga me ar ferm agus na focal vi agamse ag fás an is tan galéir imethe slí nach níl coniarm níl me buinte gom leis an talvíocht a hiile agus rudi focal ar nós cean an focal ná scansadóracht sin cean an focal fencing agus bheith muid muoigh scansadóracht, and it always put the fear of God into me, the thought of going out fencing, and my father would never have the correct, we were always short of something barbed wire or bull wire, or wouldn't have a hammer or pliers. And so just when you hear that word again, and I know it's passed out of my usage, and I can see how you were describing that in terms of how life changes and words change and time passes and words are no longer, some of the words are no longer necessary or relevant to our daily lives. But and the way that you described the playfulness of the phrases as well, and there's one phrase in Irish that I find particularly joyful, as it were, and that's the phrase for when you hear in sport and listen to Radio Gaeilge and Jose Mourinho has been sacked, agus fuairse bata agus bóthar. I just think that's a lovely way of describing a multimillionaire walking down the road with just bata and bóthar. There's down the road, and your quote from a few years ago where you said a magical vision is hidden in the Irish language and we need to rediscover it. And if that's a honours leaving cert question, discuss, can you take us through what you mean by that?
Yeah, so in one way it sounds like a very lofty idea. Well, we need to reconnect to something. Like, I have an agenda, I have a secret agenda with this book. On aim rúnda tá le stír den leabhar seo ná go bhfeilm go dhíreoing díne a rais go dtí an talamh ach ní bhán an talamh anam an duine. So I mean, in one way I pretending that I'm writing about the Irish language, but actually I'm not. I don't know, controversially, and some would probably not agree, I'm not sure language is the greatest source of communication, means of communication. Like, I think tá sé soléir go mná leatsa leabhar agus hiag fása go bhfuil rudaí eile go bhfeidhmid ó leabhar seachas tríd na focail amháin bhfeidhmid rud ag an idir na línta. So almost everyone listening to this will recognize that we get something from a book that isn't just on the pages, just isn't in the words. It's between the words. Some, and I don't want to be grandiose on a is this a Tuesday evening, but like, it's almost like an energy can be passed through a book. I firmly believe this. Mar harle shedom, you know, rugach me she im laklia, ni rev en kind of jack a lahan agent gomig an ach the war lauer a leg me harle ruddy, duskel ruddy, glassen agus cool horish la stig them into. So I was brought up in Dublin. I did not have any great insight or wider view beyond my conditioning and upbringing. This sort of, you know, and we know the conditioning of Irish people. We're a small island with a limited amount of experiences, but books unlock things for me. And there's nobody listening to this today who does not recognize that. So I wanted to use the theme of the Irish language as a key to open up these boxes, these sort of, oh, that sounds very terrible. I can't say energy portal. Kind of, that sounds something like Star Trek. But, you know, to understand, to open something deeper. And once that's opened, we can't go back, you know? And so you can do that by sending people out walking in the woodlands. No, beidir an rud far na dina chuireamach ag fás glasry and so tuchelt sahardi, you know, digging in the garden as well will connect you to something bigger. Or you can go on a spiritual retreat. There's loads of things you can go do. You can go on the yoga mat. Ach na oscalian na dorsha seo. Has je oniaker dul stakulu urashastach savuska. Once the doors of perception are open, it's very hard to go back into the box. So an rud gar has to go to Denevia mar na ocker shaw chudan agus gnosgaloch she dorsha the rinel dina vertinel capit disker shafoid der fadegs cadly shuvo on leanishin on capital shin on lower. So I knew other people would find some of the concepts in the book. There are so many bloody millions of concepts in that book. Some fall flat in their face and you think, okay, Manchán is overstretched there, and some think, ha, that's the way of thinking. So an rud gehag an chorus idachas denov con the chesh the raggart na an rud kiana yenov. And again, it's no revelation to say, obviously the thing that education is meant to be doing is knocking on little doors to open these boxes inside of us. And now I believe, and I cannot prove this, that had we tried to open these boxes, the box of knock knock, we have a rich culture, we have a rich heritage that will feed us and nourish us if we connect to. Irach deanta gwine na buski sin uskalt beidir demlian and no feblian hen ni vech ein tide lesh. So even 10 or 20 years ago, it wouldn't have been productive to try opening these doors. We were still either caught up with the Celtic Tiger or caught up with, there was, you know, up until the Celtic Tiger, when the euro reached parity with sterling, we were still thinking of us as poor. We were still in that famine mentality, or at least the 1950s mentality. A harla rud untach lastigdus na bliantashin blianta an tiger Celtic. Gotoban higemer actually is feiderling of a sever in Ilan show. So ni gading of a goni ag fechend ghoul or in Gurta nor in Drochaum nor in Gater agus in Dunachish is feiderling fechend contussig. So those years of the Celtic Tiger, and even the wealth that came in the late 90s when TGR was set up, it was a new way of us to start thinking about who we were. We weren't always going to be sending our people abroad to emigrate. So it opened up this mind, and everything that's happened since then, TGR has had a role, all of these small things, and you know, it just happens in the last year or two, this is beginning to increase. If more of us start probing these issues, we're going to find that, I don't know, can you say a bigger consciousness that at least there will be an acceptance for these things? So that's a vague answer to your question. Ach braham gur féidir go raibh sé fear yacker tacht na tishkinti móra anama seo riveré ach beidir go bhfuil sé gairí níos éasca a seo amach.
Agus ó héh an tangide an rudde tá me sixmín war ná tá na urgent daoine nua tácha chuig an tanga tríd an leabhar seo. Agus conas féitling takeíocht de thuairt dómh leanach de raig leis an sprid nua seo atá acu agus go bhhailón is mó dhéanamh agus go mór ó héh aber an leabhar de tá an daoine isteach agus deirg siad ling ó ba even lom leabhar Manchán conas an bhfuil leabhar eile agat atá ar nós an leabhar seo. But féidir gur sin ceistir san an údar an bhfuil aon leabhar eile go mhuicheann sin ar nós leabhar Manchán. Now, are you a one-off, a complete one-off?
Tá irid sin séithir a chruthú im líana atá cosú le mo leabhar. Mar gaché an lá inis, feimse riafustan ó daoine ará will I collaborate? So every day I'm getting emails from artists, musicians, dancers, yoga teachers, writers, musicians, saying, will I collaborate on a project they're doing about reconnecting the landscape and language? Ni in echer the height of a molauere. It's not because of my book, but as I say, there is an energy stirring. You know, Hudamer go vil fast nismo, vil burra nismo Leon Nadina tag study Gael na Duolingo, the Gael na ein tangela vil Duolingo yenef. So Duolingo has seen this ridiculous rise in the amount of new learners on its platform speaking Irish more than in any of the other languages. There's something going on. As I say, every day people are telling me they're beginning to write the books, but they're doing the music, they're doing the dance, they're doing operas, finding new ways for us to connect the language and culture. I mean, sochan priavrod na gemeg kaige meg chundacharige an Ryan and go to sidachas. So these things have to have an impact on the Department of Education. Agus rís gacha an lá fáim riafos nó dína ra conas a féidling a seo chur faoi bhráid and realtas. But, and again, every day I'm getting emails from people saying, how can we get this in front of the Department of Education? But I know there is so many members of the government are reading this book. People are reading this book. The next thing will happen. Maidir le de cheist conas a féidir an ghail na táimid ó sáidin is a chur chun cín, is stoilm gur bíad na lawerlin an ceannas na háitin is táchtaí. Mar nuair a cluisiim, nuair a bhúlam na daoine go bhfuil tréis fiaus mór a chur ar a chud gailna, is sé de bhar curcail cainte. Agus is féad leat, an curcail cainte formhór daoine bíonn sé háid, bíonn sé sa lawerlin, nó bíonn sé cafe, nó bíonn sé sa dáid. So, what I find is the people who I find who most had success with bringing back just the spoken language and making it a fun thing and not just about grammar and not just about going and doing classes after classes is the people who are in these conversational groups, either in the libraries or the cafes. Both have pluses and minuses. The great thing about the library is there's no extra cost. It's entirely free. For some people, they feel a duty then to buy a cake and a coffee or to buy one for their neighbour if they go into the coffee shop. Ma Asian 5 Dutch, Tergadi and Lawerlin, big Kirkle Cora in Bugrach Gache and Lawerlin. Agus, in Gache and Lawerlin, Tan shelf Eargulta, Oignach, Daruta Shin, the Lower Gaeilge. Every single library has its shelf, its lonely, isolated, abandoned shelf of Irish books. And as you were mentioning before, in the stacks underneath, downstairs or upstairs or wherever there are far, far more Irish books. Like, there are far too many Irish books published, and a lot of them aren't good, but la stigda sin, oh my God, tá shóide now, tá lauer untach loch for a aun, farlev. So, Gacartalev. So within, although there's so many Irish books are published, some aren't great. There are amazing ones. And I think the one I often recommend to people, I think I have about 4 copies on the shelf there behind me, is Pat the Pipe Piabra. It's by Cullum O'Snuddy. So of the Keela brothers, the band, on Banna Keela, Tom Winter, Angus O'Snuddy, the Tachta Dala, there's Angus, then there's Ronan O'Snuddy, who's the lead singer of Keela. There's Russ O'Snuddy, who is the Irish campaigner and is the musician in Keela too, and Cullum O'Snuddy, who is another musician, the oldest of the musicians. And he was written an amazing book about Scoil Queen. But before that, he wrote a book, Pat the Pipe Piabra. It's about a sort of an itinerant cannabis smoking musician, uilleann piper, living on the streets in Dublin. He reminds me a lot of the man who used to sell In Dublin magazine outside Bewley's. And it's just his travails, his mixed up confusion. Tá leabhar untach tainmhach, tá sé beover, tá sé bríomhar. And again, that book, Pat the Pipe Piabra by Cullum O'Snuddy, will be in the library system. Again, had we had this conversation 5 years ago, I would have just been telling you, well, it's whatever is in Navan Library or whatever is in, me and Castlepollard Library, and everything has changed now. Gach éan seachtain, bíam sé gáil leabhar ó fud fad na tíre le stig don choras leabhar in a. Thanks to this amazing this state-of-the-art new library system, where anytime I am looking at a document and seeing I want to research a book, you're going online and clicking that library book from anywhere in the whole country, and it's coming to me directly to my library. So any Irish book that has ever been published, you can now get. They will deliver it to your library, whatever, an easy walk or drive away from you. Things have never got easier to immerse ourselves in Sinn Féin a humma a chur in Wales a Gaeilge náis.
Agus Gurmagat is na bucail jazz sin faoin chóras leabharlanna mar burnt bíonn sé Jackar ó thaobh an Gaeilge Kirk Cín agus is jazz nó é pluiseáil go bhfuil daoine muin sin go bhfuil siad sásta leis. Bhí mar caiinteann sin faoi leabhar agus leabhar eile, an méid leabhar eile uaitse, an méid another 32 words for field ag taptamach ar san an nullag imlíne, an is sin an méid tú féhrú ó do bhailteóir leabhar nua.
Is doch an nuair aon leabhar irid sin mulle agus irid sin fucking dasas a bhór mu leabhar, caithime an dara leabhar scríb onas go gáin farí. Fiasagam go nech an gohansan. Éist. Sinné. Fiasagam go nléach. No, tá bronam. scream a lawer on going for undara lawer. I do now, there's an obligation on me to write a second book so that you can have the backlash. On Ruda Cartam Raw Rivishin, der Capandina on my screen to lawer, Gartarina, Takichtwort, Agus and Lawer, so shoppy. Fimes arrogant nor a doctor and Lawer on Lawer and a comma. So thank God again to a brilliant system that happened about 15 years ago now. I get money whether someone takes a book from the library or if I get it from the bookshop. So it's an amazing, the author wins everywhere, wherever you get the book. Tá Lawer screechigum in me, so, mar dort me hogan head Lawer shavely on the orm screeve. On dar screen on Fulchehor coat and son extension, tá Lawer ella oing dirachanish. So screen me Lawer nar hoga havidum, Lawer simply a hogan. Lawer the fucking evna asqueln, the lani. Lawer the forsti, dira posti le fucking evna fucking tanavacha fucking cruhacha asquelga. So it's an Irish book that is looking at like fun, creative, amazing, wondrous words for children in the Irish language. And that will be heavily illustrated and it'll be big and it will be beautiful, I hope. So agus gachchan so stoch gwil she I geshte ko hortimach den nollig. I mean hugus kue beider mio hen near han der rashkom stoch meg couple askrivle den of air. Ach an son an Lawer moor atá askrivegum fi láher na Lawer fi talav agus tiarrak na hayden. So if this first book I wrote was about the language, this book for next Christmas about kids, then the big book that I'm starting now, that I started about 6 weeks ago, is a book about the landscape of Ireland. And what I want to do is to show people how by immersing ourselves within the landscape of Ireland, just as we immerse ourselves in the language, we can open up ourselves to the hidden culture of this island, the deep insights that can be got for our own health, our own psychology, our own historical and cultural awareness from just studying the landscape itself. Agus go háire, díreach mar dhéanas leis an Lawer Gaeilge, rud príomh gnéad an Lawer Gaeilge, one a key element of the Irish language was a fechant an saoil eile, agus on na réimsí don saoil osná dúide a bhí a gcónaí mór timpplaring. So if the Irish book looked, one of the key aspects was the other world and the elements of all of those multitudinous dimensions that surround us. Bhailen fechant an slí gur féidir leis an tírdrak míad a chuirt síos bóthar on boher on the shin, that I'd like to show how by really immersing ourselves in the landscape and really looking at what is around us, the types of environment, the rock formations, the soil, the stories that go with the rivers, how they will bring us on a journey deep within our own core. So one way I'm really petrified by embarking on this and having to do it. I presume I'll have to have this to Gael by next March, so it'll be for Christmas 2023, is it? 2022. 2022. Bit of all her day. Now they're kind of snarroid like, oh, feck me.
I think I hinted agus big magic to new more leis an na lewer nua agus digam gur to an wacker gur anteling ag kaintling an méid seo agus gohfuil ceistan ag na daine tuig brand isteach agus a géiste clet agus gur wallow san chance all ceist the current. So beidir gur wallet brand new an chat an sin na ceisna agus beidir gur machtain an cup de ket na ragart.
Yeah, rud van generme na agus mátá ceisna mar dúirt Ciarán iad a chuirteach sa chatí nó sa question box. A rud van tá rud eile a rin so bhíons leabhar scríte gom, bliana hen, thugus go dtí giile. So in nirig chamise a déanamh rud camach dáma déanamh tugra eile, tugra dar title Sea Tamagotchi. So last year when the book was being published, I spent my time doing this project called Sea Tamagotchi. Ag bailú focail fariga, focail costa, o mór himpel cladig na Gaeilge mio agus dungal. So I spent the year collecting words, or whenever I could out of lockdown, getting words from Donegal, Galway and Mayo. And I put all these words, first we've made 20 19 little films of these words, of some of the most evocative words that we're going to put out around St. Patrick's Day. We're going to issue them every day. Agus an son, ach gaché an lá chudim focail avon dus na focail dríochta íomna seo, focail faraga, focail termi costa seo, amach on Twitter agus Instagram. So I put every day I put one of these words up with music by either Brian McGlynn, backing by Brian McGlynn of Ye Vagabonds, or by Claire Sands, the great multi-instrumentalist, and we put them out on my Twitter or Instagram, which is Manchán Magan, at Manchán Magan, and I also have them all up on my website at manchán.com. So I think there's hartar beidir rachiad na chichiad focail agus fuim nu an nocail agus an son mí nu an nocail an tiascara a hug an focail dom. So yeah, do check out that. Like focail nos rochávach, sin an sean faminach a bhí an catchasós an agosta. No beidir mada grithe is túr grithe, túr farna agus gomíon ma bhíon túr farna de sortégan. Mada grithe is a sort of rainbow, a semi-rainbow that is a prophecy for different types of weather. Anyway, Peish Kelly, a bhfuil ceisna nó, a bhfuil níecim sin na riine na daoine, so níecim a bhfuil a lábh súsig daoine. No, níecim na daoine eile. No. Agus mar páirte sin bhí leabhar, chur mar dail si mar leabhar eile trí hasma am níana, dar tidal sí tamagachi. Bailúchan de dahad dus na focail is simúile a bhí sa chnósach sa. Agus tá sé sin le fáil ó foilte thar beag Ilan Akla, Red Fox Press. It's called Sea Tamagotchi, a little handmade book of 40 of the terms. Ach tá sé láb dianta, so I should began costas of €3 tá an leabhar sin. Tá sé sin me híomh idirlín manchán.com freisin. So tá ceistan son, a bhfuil smaointe got clár telefísí anmh as an leabhar seo a bhainachan. Ionach ar fad. Cinnte bhreálum scanán a dhéanamh don leabhar. So nor a bhí an leabhar a scríomh gom, chundát denim sé clárach a telefíse, agus fiú in mí manor bhí clár telefíse a gom dar tidal DNA cailte faoi na tuiscintí nua atá áile goin ó taide agus sanolas DNA. So I did TV car series out last September about the ancient analysis and understanding we're getting from old DNA. Tá sé sin an Sheintor TG car, that's still up on the website. And then Crina Heron, this maybe an 18-part series I did about the trees of Ireland, that's also on the TG car player. So Bhís a smaoinemh agus bhí daoine a rá lom a scríoin a dhéanann clár telefíse faoi an leabhar. People were asking me would I make a TV program about the book, but this book is so special to me. And sometimes it does my head in how television can simplify things. And television is so full of cliches. Like I am more prone to the cliches of television than anyone. Even the pieces to camera, walking to the camera as you're walking by a tree as you're talking to the camera, or the driving shot talking to the camera like this. I wanted to avoid all that. I think there is something powerful to be made, an audio-visual version of 32 Words for Field, but I wanted it to be a film. And so there are some discussions with that. There's a great production company who's working on that at the moment, and so it'd be a non-logical, non-entirely logical film, because the book, someone told me that the book was like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Now they're a vacadón scanán riamh shit. Ach tá got piece of on leis stigdon scanán tá na daoine ag trid I lár faríse bambú, agus tá de léint ó crown bambú go dtíon crown eile. Agus é deire go tugann tú faoin aire agus tú a siad a hiocháin a fechanta seo, ní hamháin gúla ar léint ach tá de getalt. So when you look at Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, they're fighting in the bamboo forest, and suddenly you realize they're actually flying from one tree to another, and you accept it because you're in the world of the movie. Agus má hogan tusa má leabhar, agus má échan tú go fuórchúiseach agus go máil titan rudí aide as a chéile. If you take my book and read it slowly, objectively, with a clinical viewpoint, you'll think, well, wait there. Some of these arguments don't quite stand up. I'm not convinced that Irish is based on quantum physics or something like that. But my idea was just to throw so many concepts out there that people would just dance with them. It'd be like skimming a rock on the water. And you think, yeah, that's just about believable. That's just about believable. Let's imagine that it's potentially possible that some of the words that were spoken by the first hunter-gatherers who arrived on this island 10,000 years ago could be still in use today. We'll never be able to prove that. And as I said, my DNA TV series, DNA Gaeilge for TGCAR, shows that we are definitely not the same people as those first settlers, but some of their words could have jumped from one mind to another. So this sort of playing with concepts. Tá sé deacair a dhéanamh I bhfuidim an chlár telefíse, mar tá sé sin beagán cool agus teoranta, ach tá sé unariste a dhéanamh leis de scanán. So a film would be the perfect medium to really take these leaps of faith and imagination with the book. Ha. Tá há cheistelle. Conas tá mí de gúrsaí ama, Ciarán?
Better
A bhreagró me ceiste?
Ceist, yeah, mas féidir ceist na go a ragart bitin de hintach.
Am rahananta fuiineh sa tír rachan sa I lár na tíre, nó dóile go bhfuil anam nó pailemh gan scrista ag san scrista ag an bhearmóracht. Sár cheist. Ag Seán Mackay. Cinnte, tá lár na tíre tar éis irid sin ó thuairt domsa, a thuairt dom anam, a thuairt dom sprid. Mar is óid, tá fuiineh difriúla ag páirteanna difriúla don tír. Every part of a country has a different energy. So ag an ggósta bí an rudaí níos tapúla, bí an daoine ag tachtas amach de mar nélig nó fiú na bunduchas sig a tháinig. Along the coast, you'll get sailors coming, you'll get the hunter-gatherers first arriving in the country. Ach leis stig an tír, I lár tíre, bí an rudaí níos seasamach, níos seasaví, bí an rudaí níos leanúnach. So in the center of any country, you call the Midwest of America or the Midlands of England, things are more slow moving. These are the places where we conserve, where we protect, where we keep the old energies. We don't jump on every single new movement and new fashion. We keep the traditions pure and strong. So bhí sé iontach riachtanach domsa dom fás farsanta féin go dtiocfainn go lár tíre agus go bhainfinn tairmhe as an sciúnas, an seasavacht, an leanúnacha sin. It was really important for me personally, my spirit journey, that I would be in the Midlands, a place that nourishes the longevity, the long game, the continuality of the world. But má tá sé sin á dhéanamh agat, caithú dul ó am go chéile go dtí áitin I dtína cahar mórda a bhíon rudí bhíon an fuiineh níos bríomhar agus níos beómhara agus gan dáit go dtí an chósta áit go bhfuil an kind of an fuiineh Celta comma ag gobar ag glúiseacht a slí on the ifriúil. So if one is in the Midlander, we are the placeholders, we are the beacons, we are the people who conserve the old lore, but it's important that we go to the fast-moving cities and we go to the energetic tornado places of the coast too, to get a bit of that. Ach, dumsa chuirc sé sin a mú me, chuirc sé mascán maidí orm. I would get all confused if I spent too long there. I need to be here. I need to be with the trees and with the bogs of this central wonderful kingdom. Yeah. Keist bhaile agus an son churan roigarm an sonnastacha. An dóile gur fiú focail ó chainoint nach laurítar a hiile, nó na chainointíad féin a bheochant. Yeah, cadí enemies. I mean, tá ma leabhar cuiseach dóchasach, tá sé anna hóchasach, ach dá gur fáin ceistormsa cad catanándas na Gaeltachtaí, tá sé deacair ceist dearafach, a fragre dearafach worth the sin. Cinnte, feicimid go bhfuil beocht agus béim nua ag an Gaelans na Cathairicha agus go háiricha las mud den Gaeltacht. Ach an sean severus go dhéirigh me ann den leabhar seo, all the amazing wealth and sort of vast resources of Irish that were in the Gaeltacht, in West Kerry where I was growing up in the 70s. Ní eicim sé é sin hiile. So catámid can déanamh cahamid dar lumsa na sean focail a chuirtar neis, agus níl rud níos fearr ná na focail ón ar cheantar féin a chuirtar neis. So buchas leis an obairúntacha tá déanta ag a Ryan Bell Idiise. Thanks to the amazing work done by the Folklore Commission, we have so much knowledge of the words of me, of this area here where I am in Westmeath and Collinstan, Castlepollard, in Meath too. So much of the old words are there. let's not get hung up and hooked on and kaidan. Let's start taking those local words and kind of attitudes and outlooks, and with just passion and creativity, taking them back. And in one way, it can seem like a great challenge and hardship. Ach má tá dína, má tá teatsog, sásta, ober sehar cruhacha, yenna leis na focail seo, you know, ceol, aurán ceol a cuma lo, cursi drámíochta, rudí úntacha yenna lo, gohaira sehar aliana. We can make this fun by taking back the word, the old dialect and language of our area, and really owning it. In a time of absolute globalization, that we go in the opposite way, while being globalized, remaining globalized, also can realizing that we are hyper-local and that we have these resources and knowledge that not only is a handy language to identify us, but actually each of these words gives us insight into the landscapes, into the way of growing vegetables, into the way of reacting to the landscape and the surroundings around us. It can be a really rewarding, enriching thing.
An kan sin go hinnta gur fad agus an tanhas agus gur mí maigat as leirlumm an not agus me dúr cúpla focail aráig Eve river gurmid deara leis an ihe. Okay.
Manchán agus Ciarán, that was fantastic, and best of luck, Manchán, in your new book coming up. I'm looking forward to seeing that. It looks absolutely fantastic. So, Gura Míle Maith, thanks to everybody for joining us this evening for this event. As I said, it is part of our Ireland Reads campaign events. And for further information, you can go on to our library website, which is www.meathlibraries.ie, or go on to the Ireland Reads website, which is simply irelandreads.ie. So, Gura Míle Maith, Blair, and thank you very much for everybody joining us this evening. Thank you for the questions. There's a few more there. There's probably too many to get through there, but thank you again, and wishing everybody a lovely evening. Agus slán the Manchán, agus Ciarán for this evening. Okay, Gur Maith, Iwa agus slán. Slán.